Today we want to look at starting mining business in Nigeria, 14 practical guides, section 2. We've done the first to 7th section in our first video, so this is the second section. This section will be starting from 8 to 14 code. 14 practical guides, section 2. So let's look at the overview of what we did in the first one. We talked about the right team in the first video, talked about what to mine, we talked about the scale of operations, we talked about finding your ground, we talked about establishing the historical information, then we studied about landowners and community consent, how we can obtain community consent, and finally we stopped at licensing. Then in this video we will be talking about decoding the land where you want to mine, then talk about the CDA, we'll talk about the environmental obligations, then we'll talk about mine plan operation in this video. We're going to talk about mine development. After the mine development, we'll talk about ore extraction, how you can extract your ore, the methods that are available for you to extract your ore, and finally we'll have to talk about the rehabilitation and closure plan. This is what we call the EPRP program. So in this video we are going in from 8 to 14 topics on practical guides to mining. Then, as a matter of introduction, we all know that the reality of economic trend in the recent time is very glaring. So we all know that the crude oil prices and all that is swindling and very unstable, going down and all that. So the mineral mining is the business to go. So the business of mining in Nigeria, as we all know, is still underdeveloped and requires more attention and awareness for new investors, both local and foreign, to make advantage of this situation and also take advantage of what is available on ground to come in now that most of the places are still very green. So I think this is very important for us to bring some of these guides to some of our local investors and some other people who actually want to go into the business of mining. So most of the time people tag mining issues as the funding problems and all that, but there are a lot of processes that are supposed to be taken that people do not take. But the truth of the matter is that nobody would want to invest in a mine that has a faulty foundation. So we started to put up this practical process flow and approach to guide starters in the mining business. So here we are, the 8th one, we decode the land. Decoding the land is a kind of, it's finding out, is this land fruitful? Is this land possible for you to go in? Knowing that exploration is a high risk venture, but it's very lucrative when you get it very well. When you do it very well, it's very good. So it's something that you need to build your confidence level from one grade level to another grade level. So it's a well thought out exploration process that based on the mineral of interest. So we need to understand what it takes to decode the land. So it is always easier to start from the known formation, drawing emphasis from any previous activity that is advantage of starting from a brownfield. So I think decoding the land is one of the other things we need to know. Then some other important information we need to get here is that it's you need to start from a less expensive process to the next one in determining a mineral occurrence. You don't just start from drilling, for example. We know that drilling is very expensive, but there are some recognized processes you have to take based on the mineral of interest in order for you to know whether this land is worth going in or not, because everything you are going to do depends on this process. No matter how much money you have, no matter how much people you are going to bring in, no matter how much equipment you have, if you don't have the right ground, you will make it. You are not going to make it. So this is very, very important. So it is where most of the risk lies. Once you get the right ground, then you will actually get it. Now you need to understand the structural processes or the structural pattern that are actually taking place in that location, which is very important in decoding your land. Then Let's look at the next one, which is the CDA. Then CDA is just a community development agreement, which is actually required for this purpose according to section of the Nigerian mining law. This is like a must. You have to do it. It's one of the prerequisites for mining. So it's the pre-developmental activities. You know, it's one of the sensitive stage in the process of starting a mining business. The communities are very, very sensitive. So you need to understand who are these people, what are the hierarchy of these people. You know, there are certain things you need to look at in this. First one is ensure that the regulatory guidelines are actually followed while you are drafting your CDA. Then secondly, you need to know the production per time. You know, in terms of in terms of mitigating the reoccurrence of community agitation. You know, experience has shown that most of the CDA you have to do have to be based on production. Your production, as the production are coming up, the community keep getting what they get. But if your CDA is like kind of one way off or one-off thing, you know, immediately you finish building this, they will ask you to build the other one. You finish building the one, they will ask you to build the other one. So you find out that they will keep asking you for something you don't plan. But let most of your CDA be tied to your production. So as you mine, everybody gets whatever comes out from the ground based on an agreement. Another one is that you should ensure that the greater number of communities are well represented in all levels, like all the council leaders, the elders, the youth, and the women. So this is very, very important. You also need to understand the hierarchy and the structure of this community leadership to avoid sabotage of your CDA efforts, because most of the time we'll find out that these people are not, they have some hierarchy, and they are the way you need to go from one structure to the other. When you try to what do you call it, the kind of carve out a particular kind of people and deal with them alone, another group will regroup and come up with some efforts to sabotage whatever you are actually doing. So it's very, very important that you look at this. Another one is the cash, demands most of the time that are actually coming from the community. This needs to be handled with care. You need to do this because this is one of the areas that the community, when they are touched, when you are too much cash exchange hand and all that, it brings a lot of strife, and most of the time radicalizes the community. So you need to know what to do in terms of giving out cash. So this is very, very important. Then we look at it, number 10, which is environmental obligations. Now, what is the environmental obligations? The environmental obligation that you're supposed to fulfill in order to keep our environment clean and safe. Now, until a few years ago, the industry operated without even environmental regulation and are the best under an apathetic environmental regime. So, however, efforts have been made through all legislations and various policies of the government, according to Section 118 of NMMA 2007. This element that it's necessary for you to meet up as part of pre-developmental mining activities. So these efforts acknowledge the importance of environmental protection to drive and attract foreign investment in the mining sector, and as well as fulfilling national and international obligations towards environmental protection. So the plans are performed at different stages and seasons and are done by registered professional and consultant, especially being handled by Federal Ministry of Environment. There are 3 basic documents most of the time you are required to do in terms of mining. One is EPRP, which is Environmental Protection and Rehabilitation Plan. This is actually the plan and the program that tells us from the beginning to the end how you want to mitigate some of the efforts, some of the influence that are coming out from the mine, and also tell us how you want to plan a closure in order to return the ecosystem or the environment to its original state when you have you met it. So second one is the EIA, which is the Environmental Impact Assessment. Environmental Impact Assessment a document and a program that describes all the activities that are going to be taking place during the mining and how you will tend to mitigate every activity that may be harmful or that may be adverse to the environment. So that means before you come into mining, before you come into a location, there is a data you need to collect. There is a baseline data. The baseline data is the original state of the environment. And at the end of the day, you keep collecting data when you started mining, and after some years, an audit could be done to see if there are some changes in the system actually. So if the changes are there, then you need to do one or two things to mitigate the adverse effect to the system. So that is the essence of environmental impact assessment. And the third one is what we call the EAU, that is the environmental audit report. That is the follow-up of EIA. The follow-up of EIA is the environmental audit report. This actually carried out from time to time in order to, mitigate every adverse effect or effluents that are coming out from the mine. Then the next one we will look at is the 11th one, which is mine operation plan. Mine operation plan. Mine operation plan is very, very important. In short, this is like operational manual. It's operational manual of the entire process of mining. It is used for the progress of mining and rehabilitation activities across the life of the mine, and it is a commercial document. A commercial document. This is actually what you require if you are going for funding. It's what you require if you are looking for partners. It's what you require if you are going out for listing in international markets and all that. So it is the life manual for the mine. So it is very, very important. The major components of this include the fund requirements. These are the fund requirements that you need to do in your mining activities and all that. How much do you need? Capital and all that. So second one is the cash flow, how you're going to be making your money, how they flow in and flow out. All this has to be in this. Another one is your cost per ton, which is a major component. That is, it is what determines the economic value of what you are mining. Then the method of mining, what you're going to use in the ground, surface, addict, and all that, tunneling, all sort of mining methods you want to use has to be involved in this. Then another one is the overbody management. Overbody management is also very important in the sense that you need to tell us where you're going to put your overbody, the topsoil, the topsoil and other waste. Where are you planning actually to put them? Because at the end of the day, you'll be needing all this for reclamation. Then another one is the kind of equipment and tools that you require. The heavy machineries that are required in mining, how many dozers you are actually requiring, D9, D8, how many excavators, how many payloaders, dump trucks, articulated dump trucks, and all that. So all this has to come into this. All your processing material. Then the human resources. The human resources is very, very important. You need to understand how many persons or personnel that are required for every operations and all that. This high-scale operation, when actually well planned for average or large-scale mining. Then another one is the rate of production per day, per month, and annually. It is the rate of production that determines the life of the mine. Whatever you have, how long you mine, it determines how much you mine per day, per time, and what the scale you are actually mining. Vis-a-vis the funding, and the same way is a function of your plan. So another one is the water management, is a major component of this. Now, why water management is very important is that apart from the surface mining, surface water percolations or rains and all that, there is underground water which need to be controlled. There should be a kind of storage pond, there should be some retaining ponds and all that. There will be some processes that should be put in place to control, to know the amount of water that is actually coming out from the fractured zones or from if it's the sandstone that are very permeable. So all these things need to be put in place and all that. Then another component is rehabilitation and closure plan, which we just discussed in the other previous slide, what we call the EPRP. The rehabilitation and closure plan tells us the way and what it will cost you to actually rehabilitate and close the mining after you finish mining. This is just major components, but there are so many other components that could make up this. Then next one is the mine development. Now, what is mine development? It is just involving all the operations that are usually occur before the mining proper, or before the ore extraction. So it involves the construction and commissioning necessary infrastructures and all that. If you look at this, you can see that some of the previous work we did where we are constructing processing plant for coal. You can look at this. So this is actually a stage that involves so much development. The infrastructure required at this stage depends largely on the kind of operation, the scale of operation. Some of the things that are actually involved here might be some of the production facilities, the treatment facilities, the milling facilities, the processing facility and refinery, then transportation modes, and all that, even the communication and electrical infrastructure. There are some still other ones, major development towards exploitation, which involves your grubbing and your topsoil removal, the waste removal, the pit and slope formation. So these are some other kind of development that needs to be done before the extraction proper happens. So next one we are going to be looking at is the ore extraction itself. If you look at this is different kinds of extraction method based on the scale. So what is actually ore extraction? It just involves the process of removing the valuable minerals from the earth. The actual thing you are looking for, the mineral you want to mine, you now think about the way this needs to be removed. So it's not just processing alone and all that. So you need to actually understand the method suitable for your mineral. So it is the work of the technical person to ensure that what we are doing, the mineral extraction, is of economic and safest. In removing this, there must be safety and there must be economic sense. There are usually four methods of extraction, which is one underground method, the open cast method, the placer method, and in situ mining. So most of these methods are actually available. Then most of the time we use open cast here and placer kind of mining, which is actually this is involved mainly in gold washing. Most of our gold we got here in Nigeria have been gotten from the riverbanks under placer kind of mining. Even the tin. So some of the minerals that are washed along the river creeks are mined through this method. Then open cast is very common method of mining. The underground mining involves the tunneling, making of the adits and all that. So then the in-situ mining usually is sometimes involves mining that you need to mine, you put an addict and there has been some kind of a leaching method, which most of the time these things are used to mine uranium and all that, which you can see here. It's a kind of a leaching method, and there are pipes and drill holes are made directly to the ore, and it will be leached out of the location to a particular storage facility. Then the last one which we are looking at is the rehabilitation itself, which is the final closure after you finish mining. Now what is rehabilitation? Rehabilitation and closure is a process that is undertaken when the operational stage It's just not something that you even start at the end of mining. You start all this process when you've started mining. So it is a process you need to put in place in order to bring back the environment to at least to a habitable kind of state. So mine rehabilitation is the restoration of the post-mine landscape to the intended post-mining land use. So it should be conducted progressively and planned from the early stages of mining projects in order to maximize the beneficial outcome following closure. So this is in line with sustainable development principles that are defined by the UN World Commission on Environmental and Development in 1987. So now there are certain criteria. Every rehabilitation must meet. There are some conditions. One is that it must be physically stable. Any rehabilitation program must be physically stable. A second is that must be chemically stable. That is, they need to, in terms of habitation and all that. Then the third one is that it must be reasonably safe and healthy for humans, for wildlife, environment, and other ecosystem. And another one is that it must promote a smooth and socio-economic transition, as you can see. So these are some of the conditions that are actually required for rehabilitation and closure, for you to say yes, your rehabilitation is doing well. So I think with this, I would say I want to thank you for your time, for actually listening and watching our videos. Writers at Mineral Mining. Thank you and have a blessed day.